I still remember the smell of antiseptic and the nervous weight in my chest on my first day at St. Helena General Hospital in Portland. Fresh out of nursing school, I was 24, carrying a clipboard, a stethoscope, and the kind of wide-eyed enthusiasm you only have before you truly understand how broken the system can be. I'd dreamed of working in a hospital since I was a teenager, after watching nurses take care of my grandmother during her long battle with heart failure. I wanted to make a difference. I thought that's what this job would be. I was assigned to the telemetry unit, under the supervision of Dana Kemp. She was in her early 50s, lean as a whip, with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and an ice-cold stare that made you feel like you'd already disappointed her, even before you said a word. "Priya Anand," she said without looking up from her chart. "You're the new grad?" I nodded, smiling nervously. "Yes, ma'am. I'm really excited to." "Save it," she cut me off. "Don't get in my way. Don't ask stupid questions. Don't mess up vitals, and for God's sake, don't be late." I laughed softly, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. By lunchtime, she had already corrected me 3 times in front of patients. Once for the way I adjusted a blood pressure cuff, another time for the way I addressed a doctor, and then the third loudly scolding me for not double-checking a telemetry strip that she had misread herself. I could feel the other nurses watching. Some exchanged looks. No one stepped in. I brushed it off that day. Told myself it was stress, maybe hazing, maybe even my nerves making things worse than they were. I called my mom that night and told her, "It's a little rougher than I expected, but I'm okay." But I wasn't okay. By the end of that first week, Dana had made it a pattern, mocking my book knowledge, interrupting me when I spoke in rounds, giving me the most difficult patients back to back. I was running around nonstop while she sat charting at the nurse's station with her clique, sipping her 3rd coffee. Still, I kept showing up early. I studied after shifts. I practiced every protocol until I could do it in my sleep, because I believed that if I worked hard enough, she'd ease up. She'd see I was trying. But bullies like Dana? They don't back down when you're kind. They press harder because they mistake kindness for weakness. And Dana was just getting started. It didn't take long for my shifts at St. Helena General to start feeling like a minefield. Every morning, I walked through the automatic glass doors just hoping, Dana would be off that day. But no, she was always there before I arrived, clipboard in hand, eyes already scanning for something to criticize. She had this way of turning even the smallest mistakes into public shaming rituals. If I forgot to initial a medication sheet, she'd hold it up at the nurse's station and announce, "Ladies, seems Priya thinks paperwork is optional now." If I took too long with a patient, she'd bark across the unit, "You training for the Olympics, or are you just naturally slow?" At first, I thought I was just the new kid, fresh blood, an easy target. But it was more than that. It was personal. She didn't like that I didn't cower, that I stood quietly and kept doing my work. That patients liked me. One day, an elderly patient named Mr. Dorsey asked if I could be the only nurse to handle his care during his stay. He said I reminded him of his granddaughter. Sweetest man. Dana heard about it and reassigned him immediately, just to make a point. Then there were the assignments. While other nurses rotated between ICU prep and step-down units, I was stuck with the most difficult telemetry cases, combative patients, high fall risks, 2-way Foley monitoring. When I asked about it, Dana said, "It's called building character." She said it with a smile that never touched her eyes. And still, I said nothing. I kept my head down. I told myself I just needed to get through probation. I told myself it would pass. It had to. But the breaking point came during a night shift when one of my patient's vitals began to plummet. I paged for help twice. Dana was the charge nurse on call. She ignored it. Said later she thought I was just panicking over nothing. Turns out the patient had a severe reaction to a med Dana approved earlier that shift. Had I not followed up directly with the attending physician, that man could have gone into cardiac arrest. You'd think that would have changed something. Instead, Dana doubled down. She told the staff I was a drama queen who escalated small things to look good. I went home that morning and cried in the car, not because I couldn't handle the work, but because I was starting to believe maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Maybe she was right. That's when I decided. If she wanted a war, she'd get one. But I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't fight in the open. I'd learn the rules of her game and beat her at it. That night in my car, staring at my trembling hands on the steering wheel, something inside me shifted. It wasn't rage. It wasn't fear. It was clarity. Dana thrived in chaos because no one ever held her accountable. She made cruelty look like leadership and turned gaslighting into policy. But I realized something important. She wasn't as untouchable as she thought. So I stopped hoping she'd change. I started recording everything. I went home that morning and ordered a second notebook, one I kept separate from my shift notes. In it, I documented every insult, every manipulated patient assignment, every time she overrode a protocol. I included dates, times, patient names, in code, and even which coworkers witnessed the events. I logged screenshots of internal emails where her tone turned vicious. I saved voice memos of how she twisted instructions. I checked hospital policies line by line, so I knew exactly what boundaries she was crossing. But I didn't just track her. I studied her. I watched how she handled documentation, always one step removed, never leaving a trace that could be traced back to her. She barked orders verbally, avoided the internal messaging system, and only put her name on successes. So I adapted. I followed up every verbal order from her with a polite email summary. As per your instruction at 6:42 p.m., I administered the full dosage of. That alone started to make her nervous. And then, I waited. Over time, I built quiet allies. Nurses who'd been too afraid to speak out but saw what I was doing. They didn't step in publicly, but they started sending me little signals, an extra copy of a staff schedule, a heads up before Dana made a move, a screenshot of her messaging one nurse to sabotage another. They were afraid, but grateful. And I knew then, I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for everyone Dana had ever crushed. The breaking point came during a double shift on a weekend. We were short-staffed, overwhelmed, and Dana, instead of stepping up, vanished into the break room for 2 hours. When she finally came out, she reeked of wine. She looked me dead in the eye and slurred, "Handle it, princess." I didn't react. I just nodded, turned away, and made my final note for the night. That was the moment I stopped being her target and started being her trap. 2 weeks later, Dana handed me everything I needed on a silver platter. It was a night shift, unusually quiet. The kind that almost makes you nervous, like something's about to go wrong. I was assigned to room 318, a post-op cardiac patient named Elias Monroe, stable, mid-60s, recovering from a valve replacement. I had just finished updating his charts when Dana called me over. "New order for 318, she said, handing me a med tray. "Push it now before vitals." I glanced at the dosage. It was wrong. Very wrong. It was a high-dose beta blocker, twice the level prescribed for Elias. I checked the chart again. No update. No doctor's note. No digital order. Nothing. "Where's the approval for this?" I asked. Dana rolled her eyes. "Verbal. Dr. Feldman gave it to me before he left." That was lie number one. Dr. Feldman had signed off Elias care an hour earlier and was off shift. I played along. "Got it," I said calmly. "I'll just confirm real quick. Hospital policy." She grabbed the tray back from me. "You think I don't know his dosage? You've been here 5 minutes." Then she stormed off with the medication. I immediately pulled Elias' file and cross-referenced it with the system. The order had not changed. I messaged the on-call physician, Dr. Sue, who confirmed my suspicion. No one had authorized a dosage change. I flagged the moment in the internal system logs. Then I pulled the hallway security cam timestamp. It had captured her walking out of the med room, medication in hand, alone. I added that to the folder I had been building for weeks. By morning, Elias was stable because I didn't follow her order. But Dana? She didn't stop. Later that day, she filed a report against me, claiming I failed to administer the medication she clearly instructed me to give. She spun it as insubordination and tried to push it up to HR. That was mistake number 2, because now she was on record accusing me and I had the receipts. The wrong dosage. The missing chart order. The security footage. The email I sent confirming no doctor authorization. And witnesses who saw her leave the med room alone. She thought she'd buried me. She didn't realize I'd been preparing the shovel for her. The moment Dana filed that bogus report accusing me of negligence, I knew the time had come. No more warnings. No more hoping someone else would see through her. I had everything I needed, and I was going to bury her with her own arrogance. The next day, I requested a formal sit-down with HR and risk management, not just to respond to her complaint, but to submit a full misconduct dossier against her. I didn't walk in with just words. I walked in with evidence. Screenshots of the incorrect medication label, digital chart logs showing no order changes, emails where I documented her verbal instructions verbatim, security footage timestamps showing her alone in the med room, and a timeline built from weeks of harassment and unethical behavior. I laid it all out like a prosecutor in court. Calm, professional, bulletproof. Then I added the final nail, a printed testimony from Dr. Sue, confirming the order Dana referenced never existed. He was furious when I told him what happened. Apparently, it wasn't the first time Dana had used his name to justify questionable orders. But I didn't stop there. I'd also quietly reached out to former nurses, 2 of whom had left the hospital because of Dana. I got one of them, Marisol, to email HR with her own story, how Dana blacklisted her after she questioned a medication swap. Her testimony added historical context to everything I reported. At that point, HR stopped me mid-sentence. "This is serious," they said. "You understand this could trigger a full review." I looked them in the eye and replied, "That's the point." Because Dana didn't just need a warning. She needed to be exposed. And she had just walked into a trap I'd been setting for months. Every report, every manipulated shift, every condescending comment. All leading right to this moment. By the end of the week, the HR department launched a formal internal investigation, not just into the medication incident, but into Dana's entire supervisory history. And thanks to the mountain of receipts I'd provided, they didn't have to dig far. Suddenly, Dana wasn't strutting around the telemetry unit like a queen anymore. She was quieter, more careful. No more barking across the nurse's station. No more smug smirks. Because she knew something had shifted. She just didn't know how deep the damage ran. She tried to fight back, claimed I was targeting her, said I was misinterpreting her assertiveness as aggression. But the documentation didn't lie, and neither did the 3 other nurses, past and present, who submitted statements once word got out that an investigation had begun. One of them, Rochelle, had left a year earlier after Dana had given her a scathing evaluation for reporting a missed dosage. HR never followed up then. But now? That file was reopened, and Rochelle's name was back in the conversation. Even worse for Dana, Dr. Feldman, one of the senior physicians, spoke out. He confirmed Dana had a habit of referencing doctors' names to validate undocumented orders. He didn't mince words. He said, "She's been playing nurse and doctor for years." I'm surprised it took this long. From there, it was like watching a carefully arranged house of cards collapse. The board of nursing was notified. The hospital's legal team stepped in. They began reviewing every patient Dana had managed in the last 18 months. Her spotless reputation? Gone. Her long-standing relationships with admin? Worthless. The whispers in the halls turned into full-on conversations. No one was afraid of her anymore. And I didn't have to say a single word. I just watched her fall under the weight of her own choices. Because when you make a career out of stepping on others, eventually, one of them is going to rise and push back. And I had pushed just hard enough. It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of internal interviews. 3 weeks of Dana walking the hallways like a ghost. 3 weeks of me staying calm, professional, and completely silent, while the system, for once, did what it was supposed to do. Then it happened. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, 2 HR reps and a compliance officer walked into the unit and asked Dana to come with them. She didn't return that day. She never came back. Her locker was cleared out by security. The next morning, a hospital-wide memo was issued. Dana Kemp was terminated for gross misconduct, endangerment of patient safety, and falsification of medical records. And just like that, the woman who once ruled our floor with fear and cruelty was gone. But it didn't stop there. 2 weeks later, I got a quiet email from the Oregon State Board of Nursing. Dana's license was under official review, pending permanent revocation. Thanks to the compiled evidence and the physician testimonies, she was not only fired. She was about to be unemployable. People asked me if I felt relieved. Some even asked if I felt guilty. But I didn't feel either. What I felt was clear. I didn't destroy her. I simply refused to protect her anymore. For every nurse she humiliated, for every patient she endangered, for every time she made me question whether I belonged, I answered her the only way she would understand. I let her choke on the consequences of her own power. And me? I'm still here. I earned the respect of my team. I got promoted to assistant nurse manager 6 months later. And now I make sure no one on my floor ever goes through what I did. Because survival wasn't the end goal. Justice was. And this time, I wrote the final chart.